This podcast is made possible by Vena.
Hi, this is John Herman. I'm the CFO of Movable Inc., and you are listening to the CFO Thought Leader podcast.
This is episode 866.
Step one, if you have a target for the year, don't just tell the boardroom, like, we want to make X million. Tell the whole company we want to make X million. That's step one. Step two is tell them every month how much money we're making, so they know. It shouldn't be a surprise at the end of the year. Everyone should know. And then step three, tell them how they can contribute to it. Show them how they can contribute to the overall goal and let them monitor and measure the objective. So they have ownership of it. And that's exactly what we're trying to do here. So we don't only calculate the metrics, but we automate and put into our data infrastructure these metrics, so they're automatically recalculated regularly and available to anyone on a self-serve basis. And we are trying to be at the cutting edge of that, and I think that's one of the things that has really driven our performance.
Hi, it's Jack. On today's show, we speak with Jeremy Klaperman, CFO of Row. Not unlike many of his CFO peers, the early years of Jeremy Klaperman's finance career were spent trying to repair the damage brought on by the irrational market behaviors of the late 1990s and early 2000s. Unlike most, Klaperman's repair duties involved frequent visits to a remote Japanese fishing village. Back in 2002, Klaperman was an analyst with Goldman Sachs when he was handed a lengthy to-do list related to the 2002 bankruptcy of telecom giant Global Crossing, a to-do list that included completing due diligence on some of the deal-making behind the sale of some of the telecom company's far-flung assets. Unbeknownst to Klaperman, his next Goldman assignment would be based in the sea urchin capital of Japan. That story and much more on today's episode. We begin after this. Managing multiple spreadsheets, disconnected data, numbers you just can't trust. Your finance team can't be the strategic partner your organization needs right now, with obstacles like that getting in your way. Vena can change that. Vena brings people, processes, and systems together in a single collaborative analytical platform so you can drive connected business planning and better decision making. And it's the only native Excel complete planning platform built for Microsoft 365 with Power BI embedded. With Vena, your financial and operational data is always connected, and your teams are always armed with insights and time to focus on what matters most. So when the stakes are high and the margin for error low, plan with agility, plan with resilience, plan with Vena, so you can be prepared for whatever comes next. Visit venasolutions.com/planningaces to learn more about how Vena will help you plan for anything. Hello, we're speaking with Jeremy Klaperman, CFO of Row. Jeremy, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. So excited to be here.
So, Jeremy, we always begin by asking our CFO guests to look back for us. And we'd like to identify and relate some of those experiences they feel prepared them to sit in that office to be the CFO. What would come to mind for you?
I started out in investment banking and worked for 5 years at Goldman Sachs, part of the time in Asia and part of the time in the US. And then I worked in different investment firms for 15 years, part of the time in US and part of the time in Europe, most recently at Citadel and D. Shaw. And over that period of time, I was fortunate enough to be able to invest with or advise a very wide range of companies across all major regions of the world, all industries, all different market environments and cycles, from the first tech bust in '01, '02 to the financial crisis in '08, COVID, etc. And I've had a great set of knowledge built up from seeing what's been successful and also what's been a failure for all these different companies. And I have a lot of reps from working with CEOs and CFOs to understand best practices and pitfalls. And so I try to bring that wealth of experience to bear here at my current role.
Curious, you mentioned becoming a portfolio manager. You weren't originally. What allowed you to do that? What was your thinking at the time?
That was just a natural progression in my investing career. And what I would focus on always is how can we make this a better business? How can we improve performance? And I tried to use data, financial information, and other data and discuss with management teams the conclusions or how we can drive better outcomes. And that's what I think allowed us to create value for our investors when I was a portfolio manager. And it's just that type of thinking. I thought that is what was the key driver of my focus on the investment side, and applying that type of thinking to an individual company rather than a portfolio of 10 or 15 is what I focus on doing here.
Jeremy, from your bio, we know you were at Goldman Sachs for 5 years, but following Goldman Sachs, you built your career maybe in 5 or 6 different companies where 3 years, there's a number of them where you just spent 3 years. And I'm wondering, we call this the 3 year itch. Is that what you experienced?
That's an interesting observation. In fact, it was less my decision or itch, but more rather that the strategy that the investment firm was employing no longer was successful. And so actually 2 of the 5 firms that I worked at shut down, and others significantly reorganized what they were doing. And what I learned from that is something that I think about a lot as a CFO, which is you can't form your strategy or your execution based on what's happening in the current cycle or market environment, but rather you need to consider a wider range of outcomes and look forward to see how the environment may change. So what you're doing can be resilient and successful over a longer period of time. That's what we've seen the best companies do. But some of the investment firms I worked at didn't do that. They overly focused on what was working at the time, but wouldn't be effective, or in fact, might create losses depending on how the environment changed. And how to navigate cycles and not overly extrapolate the current environment, I think is important, not only for investing, but also for building a successful company. And so the fact that my tenure at the places was 3 years is driven by, unfortunately, those places shutting down and me leaving. I would have loved to stay if the places would have still been around.
You mentioned how quite a few of these roles were overseas. If one of the outfits shut down overseas and you were on to the next opportunity, it seems like you were open to whether it was the UK, the Far East, back to US. I don't know. Tell us something about that mindset that you had. Is it the opportunity?
Absolutely. I had always thought that having a diverse experience, both in terms of industry and geography, would make you the best investor or manager over time. If you look at the career progression of a lot of the best CEOs and CFOs, you can see that they had very diverse experience. They worked in different departments, sales, operations, they work in different regions. And a lot of the best companies move their people around, both in terms of focus and region, to develop them that way. So I wanted to make it one of my career objectives to do that for myself, not wait to work at the perfect company that would put me in the perfect roles all over the place, but conquer different industries, conquer different regions, absorb what were the best practices, absorb what were the pitfalls, and kind of build up my playbook or experience as a aggregate of all those different experiences.
There must have been other opportunities, perhaps, to join a corporate finance team, either as a chief strategy officer or a CFO. I mean, why now? We'll learn more. I'll ask you about Roe, but I'm curious. It was only last year that you joined. Why now?
That was actually more of the timing of the decision was more personally driven for me. I had been planning to become a CFO for a long time, but I think it's good to not move too many life pillars around at once. And what I mean by that is, in pursuit of this kind of global experience idea that I mentioned, my wife and I moved to London in 2012. Had a great experience working with two wonderful investment firms out there, investing in clients in every country in Europe and Asia. And we had our kids out there, and we wanted to move back to New York, our hometown. We wanted to find a great school system for them, great place to live. So I didn't want to do the career transition at the same time. So first we moved back to the US, got a job, another great job in the investment industry, which I was very fortunate to get. Then we found a school system, we bought a house. I had all the life pillars in place. And now it was time to make that career shift from advisor, investor to CFO that I've been planning on for so many years. And so, literally a year after within the first year of us kind of getting the house and getting the kids settled in school, I started talking to a myriad of different firms to make the move. But I think in the CFO role, I was never in a rush. And I always thought that what I was doing on the investing side in terms of meeting brilliant CEOs and CFOs every day, asking them what makes a good CFO, what are the best practices, what are the lessons learned the last 10 years, what could you've done differently or better, what created your success. Having those conversations over and over again, I feel just prepared me better. So I was continuously preparing, even though I waited for the time that I thought was best for me personally to make that move.
But if we were to maybe turn back the clock 8 years, were you thinking someday I'd like to be a CFO at that place in time, or did it come the last 3 years?
No, I think it's been a gradual progression over the last 10 years or so. Because what I really loved about investing and advising is using data and analysis to figure out what's really going on with the business, how to make it better. That's what really got me going. Some other investors I knew, they love looking at stock price charts all day or reading macro news, and that's great too. But what I loved is really going deep on the company analysis, figuring out what's going on and how to improve it. And so I view the CFO role as an extension of that.
Can you, and I'll ask you about Roe in just a minute here, your exposure to the C-suite, one of the interesting aspects, I think, of being in banking investments, as you were, you do get a lot of exposure to the senior levels of management. Am I right about that? Is there something you can share about years ago when you were seated at a table with across from a CFO, perhaps, or a CEO, and what you observed and why it appealed to you or didn't appeal to you?
So I have so many stories that I could fill a book with those, because you're right. Straight out of college, I was really lucky. Kind of being an ignorant kid, I was literally at a table with the CEO, CFO of many companies, listening to everything they're saying, taking notes, and I was just most interested. I could see that people had different decision making processes, and the people that used information to make their decisions definitely drove better outcomes than the people that were just kind of going off the cuff or less researched. And so to see those people in action and see the types of outcomes and like the dramatic differences that they were creating was what was most interesting for me.
All right. And as far as the chemistry between the CEO and the CFO, the different types of leaders that were represented at the table, can you share any reflections on that?
Well, that's a very interesting question. I mean, there are many different so many different types of people that are successful in CEO and CFO roles.
So I'm prodding you here. I'm sorry. I'm taking you down here. I was hoping you could share an anecdote, and I don't know if you have one for us.
I have a great story for the strategic finance moment.
Okay. Okay. No. That's great. That's great. Thank you. No, you're going to come through for us. That's our listeners are wondering. Here's this CFO with this really, exciting professional career that he's had, different parts of the world. There's got to be a good story. So I'll hold off. We're gonna ask you about Row, your business now, and then we'll come back and have the finance strategic moment. But tell us about Row. What does this company do? And what are its offerings today?
Row is an automated finance platform that provides a variety of financial services as well as software services to small and medium businesses. So it provides commercial banking services, credit cards, accounts payable automation for easily paying your bills, expense management software, all in one easy to use, holistic integrated platform. And what that enables these small and medium businesses to do is instead of having multiple providers of financial services like a bank, a credit card company, a accounts payable platform, an expense management platform, all working independently, not integrating, causing errors and having a lot of manual processes and inefficiency. We unify those all into one and automate and remove all these manual processes and inefficiency. So we save a ton of time. We allow CFOs to have better control over their finances, increase the quality of their work, and allow them to really focus on value-added tasks like growing the business, saving money, etc.
Okay. Well, could you maybe give us an abbreviated history of Row's capital structure, the funding over time?
Absolutely. The company was founded in early 2018 and raised its seed and Series A by 2020 and did its Series B in late 2021. So it was raised over 100 million to date with leading investors such as Dragoneer, who is the lead investor of our Series B in late 21, and other investors of ours include DFJ Growth, Inspired Capital, and M13.
So it sounds like this is a fairly early stage company. So you're stepping in. We enjoy speaking to finance leaders such as you because you get to do sort of the architecture of the function. You're putting in this finance function and there's a numbers, multiple tasks it has to perform. But can you just share with us what perhaps your first 100-day priorities might have been? Again, you only joined, I think, last May. So I'm sure they're fresh in your mind. But as you arrived, there were certain things that had to get done, I'm sure. Anything you can recall for us?
Absolutely. So, the company was almost 5 years old when I joined. And I think for its size, scale, and age, had excellent financial infrastructure. It was really about going from good to great or great to excellent rather than fixing or cleaning up a lot of things. So the first priorities really when you come in are broken into two areas, accounting and FP&A. On the accounting side, it's really to just review all the policies, confirm they make sense, or you have policies in place for everything you're doing, ensure you have an efficient and high quality monthly close process, and you're booking the right entries for every month. And on the FP&A side, it's to have a really thoughtful Excel model to project the business, consider a wide range of outcomes in different scenarios that you can share with different constituencies such as the board or lenders and use to manage and drive the business.
So let's talk about your lines of sight and how you understand that this company is performing the way it should. What are those metrics that you're looking at regularly to make sure it is?
We look at a lot of the metrics that SaaS investors would look at. So payback period, any investment we're making or money we're spending, we target to have a very quick payback period or high return on capital. We look at net revenue retention to see how we're growing the business organically. We look at our churn, which for us is very low, to show how we're retaining our clients. NPS, Net Promoter Score, to show how happy our clients are with our product. And of course, classic things like overall revenue growth, which includes both the organic growth and the new customers we're acquiring. Those are the key things we focus on.
I always find it interesting that finance leaders calculate customer lifetime value very often differently. or there's different sets of circumstances that lead them to formulate it differently. And I'm wondering if, you arrived and you thought it could be done better as well. And maybe you tweaked it. Maybe it was bulletproof and you're happy with it. I don't know, but can you tell us something about customer lifetime value?
Absolutely. I mean, we want to build things that we can have them monitored in real time in an efficient manner that anyone can use in the business to drive better outcomes. So we want to make the data available in an automated, self-serve manner. So we set up systems and processes that not only allowed us to very thoughtfully and accurately measure it, updating the measurement every month, but also share it with everyone in the business so they knew the result and then also knew what levers to pull to make it better. Should we target a different type of customer? What industry are we showing a higher lifetime value on than another? Or what industry or type of prospects do we have a lower CAC on than others so we can improve our LTV to CAC? So it's not just measuring it and calculating well, but what do you do with it? Make it available to everyone, have a transparent discussion, and then have actionable takeaways that different people throughout the business can apply to improve it.
We always hear how companies share the net promoter score widely, far and wide. Are you suggesting that you share customer lifetime value metrics far and wide across the company?
Yes, in general, we want to be on the cutting edge of financial information and data. And part of that is measuring and monitoring all of that. And another part of it is sharing it transparently with everyone. So we believe that for a company of our size, and scale, we have the best data and we make it available to everyone in the company. So everyone can see what the net revenue was from any client and all its different components at any time period. We even know what the net revenue from yesterday was. And different people can go in to see whatever the relevant measurements are, whether it's revenue or NPS, for the parts of the business that they're in and what those parts of the business impact to monitor it and drive better outcomes and value there.
Okay, so there's a customer-facing support representative, someone who, when your customers got an issue, this is the person who engages with them and makes everything better, or tries to satisfy the customer.
Yes,
takes a good deal of management training sometimes to perform in that role. Is the customer lifetime value metric going to mean something to them?
It will. We tend to focus that group more on revenue growth and NPS. It is absolutely because those can be measured in a more real-time way. Every month we'll know our revenue growth, and every month we'll know what the results of our NPS survey is. Lifetime value is something that we focus on less, just because a lot of that is estimated, right? You may be estimating. A lot of times when people disclose lifetime value numbers, especially for earlier companies, they're estimating what will occur in the future. And the lifetime value changes very slowly. If you have a customer that's been around for 2.5 years, an additional month doesn't change that much. So it's not as good a real-time indicator of what's going on. But things like NPS, revenue growth, and some of the other things I mentioned, we can see every month the impact of our actions, and so that's what we tend to focus people more on.
So I'm trying to figure out how to distinguish you from other organizations. I want to ask this again just to clarify. So it sounds like you're sharing metrics more widely within the organization, and you're giving people the benefit. And you're not doubting that they know what or will understand it. It seems like you're taking a leap of faith. Just give it to them. Some of the executives out there might have input that we had never thought of before in relation to this metric and why it's performing the way it is.
No, I think, Jack, you summarized very well. We've found, and I found through the 20 years of experience I mentioned to you in all these different areas, that the companies that have more transparency tend to perform a lot better. And if you share the information with people, and we don't just share the information, but we try to educate people on it and guide and mentor them as to and have a conversation with them about the implications of the data. So what actions can we take to improve this? What actions should customer service or sales or ops take to improve metric X? Let's brainstorm. And then after we've discussed and resolved as a team what we think the best actions are, let's go execute this quarter and let's monitor what the metrics are doing throughout the quarter. So it's not just sharing; it's using it and having a conversation to work together as a team to drive better outcomes. But we want to be on the cutting edge, and we believe we are on the cutting edge of using financial information and operating data to monitor what we're doing consistently and provide it to folks. And I've seen that some of the best performing corporates do that, and some of the best performing investment firms that I've worked at do the same thing. And that's what we're trying to do here. And that's what our product allows customers to do. It's putting all the information about their spend and their cash management into one simple place so they can better understand and control what's going on. So you don't need to log on to a bank website to see who spent a lot of money on their credit card. You don't need to sift through 20 paper bills to pay your bills properly, etc. You have it all in one place. You have the information. You can make decisions. The philosophy we use here is what we espouse is exactly what our product allows our clients to do.
As you look forward, as the vision for the product and your own finance organization takes shape, curious if you're prioritizing things differently than a finance function from 10 years ago or a different technology company altogether in terms of talent, in terms of who's at the table as you discuss the metrics and try to understand them better. Can you tell us how your finance organization, given the vision for the product and what it promises organizations, how you think that your organization might look different than others?
Oh, absolutely. So I think a lot of finance organizations, and certainly those from 5 or 10 years ago, would have a lot of spreadsheets going around to calculate these metrics that we were talking about. They would probably get stale. They wouldn't be easy to update. They couldn't be easily shared. And we try to integrate finance and data. So not only does the finance team report to me, but the data team reports to me. And so we integrate our financial and operating information with our data warehouse and integrate that with our business intelligence tool. So anyone can log on to using their web browser and see all this information that I just mentioned to you. Gross profit by client by month, net revenue by cohort, CAC, NPS in a self-serve automated way. They come to their desk in the morning, turn on the screen, boom, all the metrics are there. And that is just so much more efficient and impactful than, two people working on a spreadsheet and passing it back and forth and emailing it to a few people. So we don't only calculate the metrics, but we automate and put into our data infrastructure these metrics, so they're automatically recalculated regularly and available to anyone on a self-serve basis. And we are trying to be at the cutting edge of that. And I think that's one of the things that has really driven our performance.
Interesting. All right, you're getting me to think about it. I'm wondering, what percentage of the workforce might actually access these numbers. In a traditional organization, it would just be a small fraction, mostly your finance folks, some operations folks. But within this company, we've got 20% penetration of the entire workforce is looking at those numbers. To me, that would be a big number, depending upon the nature of the company. I don't think you have.
Oh, I think we're higher than that because here's an anecdote for you. I remember I was meeting with the CEO of one of the best performing companies in Scandinavia, which shall remain nameless. This person's a rock star. So I asked them, what is it that allows you to create this ecosystem, this environment, this company? And they said it's to clearly communicate a strategy and always repeat the message and have the information behind it so people can monitor the progress of it. So step one, if you have a target for the year, don't just tell the boardroom, like we want to make X million. Tell the whole company we want to make X million. That's step one. Step two is tell them every month how much money we're making so they know. It shouldn't be a surprise at the end of the year. Everyone should know. And then step three, tell them how they can contribute to it. Show them how they can contribute to the overall goal and let them monitor and measure the objective. So they have ownership of it. And that's exactly what we're trying to do here. So I hope we're much higher than 20%. I know we're much higher than 20% because we have data on we have data on our data. We have data showing how much people are looking at our data. So it's much higher than
And
20%.
I don't know if you're aware, we always like to ask about finance's talent mindset and the CFO finance leader's talent mindset. This might be an interesting way to segue to it because it seems like by having the workforce more involved in the numbers, involved in those metrics, or aware of them, what they mean, the organization as a whole can achieve greater buy-in in terms of the priorities and why certain decisions are made the way they are. How am I doing? Am I close to how your talent? Yeah.
You are absolutely right. Jack, I might have to poach you and hire you
All
for a
right,
team here,
just
but that what
putting
you're saying
pieces
is exactly.
together for the puzzle. But is it a reality though? Is it what I don't want proof, but I'm curious. Is it the mindset that you have as a finance leader is directly related to achieving that buy-in, greater visibility, transparency? This is all the same to you.
Yeah, because I think a good finance leader doesn't just produce numbers or analyze numbers, but it's a partnership role. It's providing the information to all the other leaders, to all the different people throughout the organization, teaching them, incorporating their feedback, and helping them achieve better outcomes. It's almost like a service role, for lack of a better word. You're here to help people do a
Yeah,
better
the
job. You're here to support
servant leader
people.
model. Yeah,
And
yeah.
yeah, that's exactly right. We want the finance function to be providing information that allow people to do a better job, enjoy their job, get better satisfaction, be more sufficient, be more efficient, rather. All of those things.
Well, that's excellent. Thank you for that. We are now up to our finance strategic moment question, where we're just looking for one anecdote or story from your career where you had a moment of insight along the way, and you responded to it. You did something differently. Maybe you avoided a risk. I don't know. But anything come to mind when we ask for a finance strategic moment?
Absolutely. So I recall early in my career, I started my career in '01 when there was a series of dramatic events that were harmful to the market and the investing environment for quite a few years. So obviously, starting off with the tech burst, and then September 11th, and then the WorldCom accounting scandal and other accounting scandals. But what this all revealed to me was a huge amount of money had been invested in companies that over extrapolated or over capitalized the current environment. So they assumed that whatever was happening in 2000 or 1999 would go on forever. Whatever chart they were looking at would continue to be up and to the right and shoot the moon, and they wanted to base their business on that. So, for example, you may remember there was this company called Global Crossing, and there were projections of internet traffic growing at exponential rates. So they built a huge amount of subsea cables. This is like a cable that goes from California to Japan or from Paris to Florida that carries the internet traffic from one continent to another. So they laid a gigantic amount of these subsea cables in anticipation of this huge internet traffic, and it never materialized, or certainly didn't materialize in the time frame they thought. So the whole thing went bankrupt. And a lot of work on the investment banking side in those '01, '02, '03 timeframe was to pick up the pieces of all the failed businesses from these kind of bad strategic decisions. So I just remember I was doing due diligence on one part of this was a what's called a subsea cable landing station, which is like this big random building on a remote beach in Japan, of all places, where one of these giant cables landed. I went there, and they had built this giant landing station in the middle of like a fishing village that fishes for uni, sea urchin, if you like sushi. So we were in the sea urchin capital of Japan trying to, sell a bankrupt subsea cable that lands there. And it just occurred to me like what bad business decisions can occur when you over extrapolate the current environment or don't appreciate the cycle. Some of the great investment writers like Howard Marks have written about the cycle and how the pendulum will swing from one extreme to the other. And I've just seen so many business failures made on assuming the pendulum's going to stay on the extreme right or left, and then they all blow up in '02 or '03 or '09, et cetera. Whereas you have the good businesses and the good leaders knowing that the pendulum's always going to go back to the center and swing around a lot in unpredictable ways. And you have to make your plan based on that. So when I was sitting in this random fishing village looking at this failed subsea cable that we were trying to rescue from bankruptcy, it was just so obscure and unusual. It occurred to me that really bad things happen when you don't think about the cycle and consider a wider range of outcomes over time.
Hi, it's Jack. I hope you're enjoying our discussion with CFO Jeremy Klaperman of Rowe. It's interesting. I've perhaps pointed this out before, but I think it's worth mentioning again. We have this very large freshman class of CFOs whose earliest career chapters and experiences unfold in the midst of the dot-com bust, where finance and crisis management often met. And it certainly sent people places they never expected to be, such as the sea urchin capital of Japan. In any case, we'll now return to our interview with Jeremy Klaperman. We're going to jump to our mentoring round where I'm going to ask you to look back again. And again, this is so recent, but I'm wondering if you go back only 9 months here as you were stepping into this role, is there a piece of advice you'd give yourself? And again, I'm intrigued by this. You're finally stepped into the CFO role. What is it that you wish someone had told you? Might still be fresh in your mind, you know.
Well, it's interesting because I spent 20 years gathering information so people would tell me what to do when I stepped into the role. But I think the key important thing is to establish relationships with everyone in the company and with them review from a clean sheet of paper what the right systems and processes should be. Don't just continue doing what has already been done or what has always been done, but rather you yourself independently assess and work with the other people to say, if we were going to recreate this today to be the optimal system, or if we're going to be 10 exercises in 5 years, we want a new system, what should it be? So don't let yourself be influenced by what has been done before. Think clean sheet of paper, think big, think broad, think 2 years out, where do you want to be? 5 years out, where do you want to be? 10 years out, where do you want to be? And start building with everyone from there.
Nice. Thank you. Thank you for that. We always like to ask our guests to reflect a little bit on the personal side with us. We're curious whether you're known for a habit or a part of a daily routine. We're really thinking outside the office. So it might be something a family member might point out to us. That's what Jeremy does. He's always done that. Whatever it might be. Anything come to mind when we ask for a routine or a personal habit that sets you apart?
I don't know if it's a routine or habit, but one of my joys is to build Legos with my daughter. My daughter is I don't know. I've always loved Legos since I was a young child. Kept all my Legos, and now my two daughters are really into it. So we have an entire room at our house where we just build giant Lego structures, and I just love that because I feel like part of my job is a certain part of the brain. It's very cerebral, and when you're designing stuff in Lego, it's very artistic almost. It has elements of architecture and design and color. So it's it's very orthogonal. It's a wonderful complement to my day job, and then just being able to do it with my kids, like kind of my childhood love. It's just really fun. So that I'm probably guilty of playing with Legos more than other adults or other dads should be.
Yep, timeless now. It's great. Thank you for that. Curious if you have a book recommendation for us. It doesn't have to be a business book. Might be just something you read to escape. Don't know.
You know what? One book I read recently that I really liked a lot is called Misbehaving: The Making of Behavioral Economics, which is a very witty summary or history of the field of behavioral economics as told by Richard Thaler, who's kind of like one of the inventors of the field. But what I like about it is he doesn't take himself at all seriously. He has all these kind of self-deprecating comments, and he's always finding humor and jokes and poking fun at what all these other, economists or academics are doing, and what is maybe incorrectly perceived as like, not a very humorous profession or group. He's, playing practical jokes, making fun of everything, which I just love, in addition to teaching you stuff. It almost reminded me of this other book I love, which is called Surely You're Joking, Mr. Feynman, which is written by the famous physicist Richard Feynman, who similarly teaches you stuff, but doesn't take himself seriously, always making fun of himself, making fun of other people, like creating a lot of jokes along the way, but also doing really interesting academic work. So those are two books I really like.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you for both of those. We are up to our final question, where we're going to ask you to look forward finally. And we're wondering about your priorities as a finance leader over the next 12 months. What would those be?
Really continue the work that we are doing to integrate finance and data and continue to be on the leading edge and push the boundary of measuring and understanding everything we're doing and sharing it with everyone. And I know that's kind of repetitive with what I just said, but I just see that as already having created so much value for us and really making a difference for us in what we're doing. And also, it rhymes with what we're doing with our clients. We're giving them more information and data to make their companies better, make their lives easier, give their employees a better experience. And it's really just continuing to build that out and like kind of push the leading edge. We want to be the thought leader of that field, and we think we are.
Jeremy Klaperman, thank you for joining us on CFO Thought Leader.
Jack, thank you so much. Really enjoyed being on it. Thank you.
Hello, Thought Leader listeners. As you have perhaps already heard or even seen, we're now featuring the career lessons and moments of strategic insight shared by our CFO guests as Thought Leader videos. You can now find these videos on our blog at cfothoughtleader.com and, of course, our newsletters, but also on LinkedIn. If you haven't already, please go ahead and follow our CFO Thought Leader LinkedIn company page, and you'll be certain not to miss a single Thought Leader video debut. CFO Thought Leader, the #1 thought leadership platform exclusively for and by CFOs. As always, thank you for listening.